So, by the time you watch this, or listen to it, Edge would have either debuted or not debuted in AEW at the end of WrestleDream. And the reason I say that is because apparently it's being pushed, thanks to Darby Allin even, blurting it out there, if you will, in the interview that JR did between him and Christian. Darby Allin blurting it out that he and Christian will be the main event. Basically, they'll be the ones that close out the show for AEW's WrestleDream. And, based on, I guess, what they showed during the 0 hour with Christian looking on during the Antonio Inoki presentation, and ceremony, honoring Antonio Inoki and presenting flowers to his grandsons, yeah, I guess that does kind of justify it being the main event. Now, with that said, though, when Darby Allin said this, it got a lot of people speculating more so than ever, and even more so in the past 24 hours, seeing as though his contract is officially expired and he is now a free agent, that Adam Copeland, known as Edge in WWE, will debut during or after the match. And if that is true, if by the time you listen to this or watch this, if it is true that Adam Copeland is now all elite, the question will be, what do they do with him? What's the hook, if you will? What's the hook? What is what's the hook in investment that's going to get people to tune in? What's the plan, if you will, the storyline? And those are good questions. I look at it one way, and a lot of people speculate something similar. One way is you could have Edge cost Christian the TNT title to Darby Allin in Darby's hometown of Seattle. You could do that. You could have him cost, Darby. You could not Darby, have him cost Christian the championship to Darby Allin, and then maybe follow it up by having him explain on Dynamite or Collision the reason he did it. Maybe bring up the fact that every time things don't go Christian's way, when he thinks that they're going to, he throws a fit, he becomes a whiny little bitch, and he starts using and manipulating people to his will to get what he wants. Maybe he brings that up. Maybe he brings up the history between him and Christian and how, even though they had success as a team, that later on in the careers, it was Christian that turned his back on Edge because things weren't going Christian's way, but they were going Edge's way, or something like that. They could probably go in that direction to where basically he calls Christian out for being somebody that has never had the balls, if you will, to stand on his own and just accept the fact that, hey, just because you might think it's going to go your way right away doesn't mean it will, and you need patience. Maybe he brings up the fact that, hey, look at me. It took me literally, what was it, like 7 years? 7 years after he debuted to become a champion, to become a world champion, the first of his 11. Maybe he brings that up. We don't know. Maybe he brings that up. We don't know. As an example of, hey, you need to wait. You need to wait and everything, or have patience for your opportunity to show up, because it could show up at any time. Maybe he brings up the fact that when Christian originally left Stanford, maybe they'd say WWE, who knows? He says, yeah, it didn't take you. It says, you debuted for Impact, and guess what? In a few months, you became champion. He said, and then maybe he brings up the fact that, hey, the reason Impact did that, though, is because they were desperate for viewers, and you being a stalwart of WWE like I was, they wanted to get attention on them, so they put the belt on you. Maybe he brings that up, the fact that only companies that are desperate would be willing to rush somebody to the championship instead of taking their time. Or whatever the case may be, we don't know. The point I'm getting at is they could go in that direction where he calls Christian out for his BS and the fact that every time things don't happen the way he wants them to or he thinks they should, he whines and complains and he starts using people and he turns his back on the fans. Maybe they do that. Or, hear me out, maybe they do align Edge, Adam Copeland with Christian, and maybe he aligns with Christian because he can relate to Christian as being held back and not given what he is promised. Maybe he does bring up the fact that it took Christian leaving WWE to go to Impact TNA, back in 2005, just to be a world champion in everything, for the first time in his career, when easily WWE could have done it right off the bat, but they didn't. Maybe he brings that up. Maybe he brings up his history of, hey, it took me cashing in a freaking, Money in the Bank contract or Money in the Bank title shot to become champion for the first time in my career back in 2005. 7 years, not 2005, 2006, 7 years, if you will, after I debuted. 7.5 years after I debuted. Maybe he brings that up. Maybe he does, maybe he touches upon those histories as a relation as to relate to why Christian is pissed off, why Christian is doing this. Because he was promised by Tony Khan, that being Christian, that he would be AEW World Champion if he came in. And that the one thing him and Christian have always had in common as best friends, if not brothers, is that when you make them a promise, when you make them a promise, you are meant to keep that promise, not hold off on it, for so long until basically, someone like Christian loses patience. And maybe he brings up the fact that that's another thing that brings them together. They both don't have patience for waiting too long. Who knows? I mean, to me, the possibilities of either he comes in and costs Christian the match or he aligns with Christian, the possibilities of where they could go, are endless. Like I said, they could have him, if he caused Christian the title, explain the actions and just basically call Christian out on his BS, saying you've always been a whiny little bitch who's always whine and complain when things don't go your way, and thus you always end up using and manipulating people to your will when when you basically feel you should, or when you basically feel like you have no other choice. Maybe he brings that up. Maybe that's the direction they go. Or maybe, they have him, like I say, aligned with Christian and explain that, the one thing that's connected them together as best friends, for life, as well as like brothers, is they've both been promised, world championships as they joined, only to be, shafted, on those promises for too long until basically, they had to find different ways of making it happen. And that maybe also he can explain, hey, Christian like me is not a patient man. We're people that like, to have the opportunity, right then and there. Like we don't like waiting too long. Maybe that's the direction they go to. We don't know. Maybe you do make it a new version of the coalition, Christian's coalition, but it's just called the coalition. And basically, perhaps, maybe it's the coalition versus AEW. Sort of like an NWO-ish like storyline, to where you have the Christian, or not the Christian, but the coalition basically feud against the company, against things like the Elite, the Blackpool Combat Club, and all that, until basically Christian, with the support of Edge, gets what he wants, but then maybe you twist it to where Edge ends up getting it, or Adam Copeland ends up getting the opportunity, at a world championship before Christian, and there's a story you could build upon too, depending on how long they have Adam Copeland under contract. Again, that is, if he debuts tonight at WrestleDream, if he hasn't already debuted by the time you listen to this. Now, the question is, what will happen if he doesn't debut? What will happen? Well, I can tell you this, AEW has suffered a lot already, negatively, press-wise and all that. The attendance, is not the best of what it used to be, if you will. their attendance is down. I mean, I don't know if they were able to finally sell out most of the venue that they're at tonight, if you will, in Seattle. But I can definitely tell you this. If they don't deliver on what people are speculating tonight, then that attendance that they're suffering from right now, because they were at like what 7,000, 7,000 plus, 7,006, about almost, I would say almost, God, what was it? Almost like 77,000. Well, not 77, but not that's that arena doesn't fit that many. But they were at what 7,700 seats, sold already, with over 1,000 still left to go, to do a sellout. It's like, this is AEW. It's supposed to be an alternative, and you're basically booking these smaller arenas because hey, that's probably the best we could do. But if they don't deliver on what people are speculating tonight, then I feel sorry for the future attendance, because then people are just going to say, screw AEW, we're not going to attend anymore because we thought they were going to deliver on what we knew or what we believed they would be delivering on tonight. So they need to deliver. And if they have delivered by the time you watch this, then all power to them. And if they haven't, by the time you watch this, delivered on what fans are hoping for, then I feel sorry for Tony Khan. I feel sorry for AEW. Because basically that's just another black eye you do not need. But all signs are pointing, ironically and time-wise are pointing towards Edge, Adam Copeland, becoming all elite by the end of tonight. If not already by the time you listen and watch this. But we'll have to see. But what are your thoughts? What do you think the plans will be, the direction will be for Adam Copeland, in AEW, if he has debuted already by the time you listen to this? What do you think they're going to do? And what do you think will be the aftermath and basically the reaction towards AEW if he does not debut, at WrestleDream, or if he hasn't debuted at WrestleDream by the time you watch this? Let me know down below in the comments, as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video, and until next time, guys, I am out.